Olivia here, functional fertility dietitian, and I have a special fertility feature today. We're talking with Rachel. Rachel is one of my clients who is now she is in her second trimester, right, Rachel?
Yep, 16
Second
weeks. Mm-hmm.
We were just talking before we jumped on the call. She's feeling so much better from her first trimester. And so we're happy for her about that. And I wanted to ask Rachel a few questions just about her journey. And she is so gracious to talk to us about her journey with her trying to conceive process. And then when she found me and us working together, and just kind of how all of her efforts came together and really got her to the position she is at now. So Rachel, welcome and thanks for joining.
Thank you. So just an introduction, I contacted Olivia. I went and looked at my emails because time kind of has lost its meaning with the pandemic and with fertility. But I contacted you, I think, in July of 2020. And at that point, my husband and I had been trying for over a year, and we had experienced, unfortunately, 2 losses at that point. And we were kind of in that limbo space where we weren't ready to think about jumping to IVF or those treatments, but we also weren't really making any progress by letting time just pass. So I don't know what I Googled to find you, but I did. And yeah, it fit really well. And it was sort of the missing piece, I think, in the care I was already getting. So I'd been to a reproductive endocrinologist, I had an OB, but I just wasn't really getting the full type of care that in my gut, I felt like I needed.
Yeah. I love that you say that. It's so often that missing piece, right? That's what I think a lot of my clients and a lot of couples and women are kind of searching for and not really understanding where to go for it, or not really sure if it exists. And that's what I try to provide in functional fertility, just kind of like bringing it all together. And I always encourage people to work with a team. It's, whether you're working with an RE or your gynecologist or OB, and bring a functional fertility approach into that picture is really kind of like the gold, status that we're looking for. So I love that you were able to kind of bring all that together and really kind of fill in that missing piece. So what did you find, when you're seeking out that function? I know you said like, not even sure what you Googled to come across my page, which is great. But like that gut feeling, what word or like what did you think was maybe missing? Just that feeling that you had, and what made you seek that out, that additional step?
Yeah, so I remember really clearly going to see a very big, famous reproductive fertility clinic here in Philly, and they told me literally, we don't care about anything that's going on outside of your uterus. And I was trying to say like, oh, but I get all these PMS symptoms and my periods, and they were just like, we don't care. We're just gonna redo the uterus. All that doesn't matter. And something about I like to be I think I've always been I like to self-empower. I like to listen to podcasts to learn about fertility. And there's just so much stuff about women's fertility, even outside of trying to get pregnant, that is so opaque and not well taught. So I think I had that gut feeling that I was interested in getting to the root cause of why it was so hard. And I also I also had a gut feeling that it was more to do than just with, one part of my body, and that was all interconnected. That's how I experienced my body. That's how I believe, making a baby works. Like the whole, everything matters. So I wanted some support with that. And that's what I felt like you could offer.
Incredible. Yeah. And I remember even when we first met, you did come in with such information about your body. You did. And I was so impressed. And I love whenever women come to me and they're already kind of like, I know my body. I know something isn't where maybe it should be. I know myself enough, but I'm just getting brushed off by, whomever it may be. And that I love what you took that extra step, and you were just not going to take that for an answer and continue to seek out that support. So I think that's a lesson that so many women can take from this interview right now, is just understanding that if you feel, and like Rachel said, that gut feeling, if you feel there's something outside of just that tiny picture of your reproductive system, if you feel like those symptoms, you know what they are. I mean, they can vary from fatigue, PMS, heavy periods, no periods, all these things that I talk about a lot. Those all matter in your fertility. So kudos to you for really kind of pushing that and understanding that they are important in our overall health. Our female health is important for our female fertility. So that's incredible.
And I just want to add that it's not like a knock on reproductive endocrinologists. I continue to see my RA, I continue to get testing, and I just think it's a both and kind of thing, like you were saying. Yeah.
That team. Yeah. And it's just, I call functional nutrition a bridge, and functional medicine in general, it's a bridge between our traditional kind of allopathic medicine that we tend to practice in this country, and maybe, some more Eastern types of medicine, right? That maybe people think are too far out there. It's really a bridge that brings the two together, because we're taking that whole body approach along with the traditional medicine approach, which or allopathic, that's confusing. But things like, medication or doctor or whatever, those are all very important. So yes, it is really just kind of bridging that, and functional fertility is, I think, a very important piece of that. So it's that teamwork is essential.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, when we first started working together, we were working together one-on-ones, and then you actually joined in a group program that I was running, and that helped you to go through my 3-pillar approach to optimize fertility. Now, do you think that helped you on this journey, and overall kind of was that that missing piece, or a part of that missing piece? Tell us about the 3-pillar approach.
Yeah, so I definitely appreciated, again, the holistic sense, and not just in terms of nutrition strictly, but especially the piece around stress. I think a huge thing that you always told me, like practically every session, was because I came to you and I come to this fertility journey just with so much like neuroticism almost, and stress, and just feeling around food, right? Around like, oh, everything I put in my mouth, it's like a million questions. Is this okay? Is this what's stopping me from getting pregnant? And I think that's very normal. We receive a lot of cultural messages that, things are like our fault, or, there's a lot of misinformation and fear mongering, and unfortunately marketing that preys on that fear. So I was definitely very controlled and consumed by that. And I think you always reminded me, Rachel, it's not really what you eat as much as how you're eating it, your stress levels when you're coming to the table. So I think the 3-pillar approach really kind of started that and emphasized the stress piece. And of course, like the last thing someone trying to get pregnant wants to hear is stop stressing out. But I think having like concrete ways I could stop maybe, sabotaging myself unnecessarily was really helpful, and also just made eating fun again, because it should be, at least sometimes. So that was helpful. And then Macro Trio specifically was super, like, a great planning tool. It kind of mostly aligned, I think, with how I was eating already, which was affirming. But my biggest takeaway was just I could be eating more. And I think for a lot of women, their takeaway is like, oh, I could be eating more. So we're so used to portion sizing telling us, oh, you should eat less. But I think with you, the light bulb was like, wow, my body needs to be in abundance, needs to be in excess.
You got it. Yeah. I mean, you hit on so many important facts. I love that feedback. The pillar number 2 is depleted to repleted. That's literally what it's called. And a part of that, then there's kind of like some sub portions that we go through into that, but is nutrients, right? If we are deficient or not getting enough nutrients from eating enough food, then we can be not providing the optimal environment for our fertility. And so many women, even unconsciously we kind of underfuel because I mean, so many reasons, society and culture, body image issues, so many things. And we may not even realize, we think And just like yourself, so many people I work with, they're eating healthy, right? Like they
Yeah.
know foods to be eating. They're aware of foods that generally aren't going to be supportive and what we don't want to be eating all the time.
Hmm.
However, a major thing is kind of addressing, okay, let's actually look at, are we getting enough? And so,
Mm.
yeah, the tools, I'm so happy to hear that those tools were very helpful for you. And the stress, yeah, it's, you know, I tried really hard not to say, we need to stop stressing about getting
Yeah.
pregnant because like, okay, that's just
Yeah.
not practical, right?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so yeah, the stress mapping, giving it people really, like you said, concrete examples of how to actually mitigate stress, not to avoid it because stress is unavoidable, especially in a trying to conceive journey, but what we can actually do to help that and help how stress affects our hormones.
Hmm.
Awesome.
Hmm.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I'm so happy to hear it. And lastly, I kind of want to just talk about Dutch testing. So, we did a Dutch test with you, Rachel. Dutch is a dried urine test for comprehensive hormones, is what it stands for. And I do this in all of my fully functional one-on-one programs. I have it as an optional add-on for other programs for people to do. Rachel chose to add this on to her already existing knowledge of her hormones and what she had done with other practitioners and her journey there. How do you think that helped you to fill in some of those gaps? And what information did you really enjoy learning from that?
Yeah. So I kind of want to be honest and start out saying that it wasn't like a immediate choice to do the Dutch testing. I actually had an argument with my husband about it. I remember sitting here on our bed and him being like, "What is this test going to tell you? Like, you're just going to pee on some paper, and it's going to help us become pregnant."
Love it.
Um,
Yep.
so just to normalize that a little, and it's hard, right? Because there are so many things that you can buy to totally help you get pregnant. It's really hard to sift through that and decide what really going to help and what's worth taking a risk on. But I think ultimately, to me, the investment was so this was a few months down, and we were kind of getting closer to thinking about IVF. And IVF is such a big investment, and also kind of doesn't help you out in the long run necessarily, right? You might have to go back and do it again.
Right.
So, and also I had been experiencing PMS for the longest time. I sort of knew something was off with my hormones. Nothing that would flag an abnormal cycle, just like ovulating a little later, a little inconsistently, having breast tenderness, and just some of those symptoms, headaches, some pain sometimes. So that prompted me to want to do the Dutch testing. So we did the Dutch test. I got the results, I think, in November. And the main takeaways were the estrogen, I think, that was high, which made sense, but it was nice to kind of get concrete evidence. And then the protocol that I was put on, I started in November. And that cycle was the first cycle I had no breast tenderness. And it was like, oh my God, this stuff works. Like, this is not, like I kind of knew it worked, but to have such concrete evidence that it worked was pretty incredible. So I was really happy about that. That was also our first IUI cycle, which we decided to move forward with because our insurance covered it, and it kind of we wanted a buffer of some months to let the Dutch protocol work, and before we were jumping into IVF. So that was my November cycle. December cycle came around. I was still on the protocol, and I noticed at around 8 days after ovulation and the IUI, I was having breast tenderness. I was like, either this protocol stopped working all of a sudden, or something else is going on. And I kind of had a hunch I might be pregnant, so I actually stopped the protocol. That's how confident I was, and I was pregnant. And I'm still pregnant now, from that, like 2 months after that, and yeah, it just feels like a story that I would read about or hear about on the internet, not something that would happen to me. So if you're feeling like that, it's just like I kind of was mentally resigned, like, okay, we're going to try these things for my peace of mind, but we're ultimately going to have to do IVF. And everything's going well with the pregnancy so far, and I still can't believe it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, as Rachel mentioned, estrogen is one of those main sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone. For her, we were focusing on estrogen. I always say, don't guess, test. And that's what we did with her, right? We tested, even though it wasn't the easiest first go-to, because it is an additional cost. I mean, yeah. And to understand how this is actually going to bring in helpful information is sometimes the biggest hurdle. So I love that you were honest about that conversation with your husband, because that's real. I mean, yeah, what actually is this going to show us when we see high estrogen? Specifically, estrogen is very much important in the proper thickening of the uterine environment, the endometrial lining, but also implantation of the fertilized egg. So all of that, focusing and really zoning in on then what we knew in that testing to then focus on was, awesome. Just, I love hearing that timeline and how that was kind of like that final piece of the puzzle, bringing that in, and really then being confident that that next cycle was going to be different with your IUI. So, I'm so happy you had that hard conversation with your hubby and decided to go for it. It's just with the right information, it's amazing what we can zero in on, because again, I think that's such a big part of it. And correct me if I'm wrong, Rachel, but I think you kind of alluded to it earlier. There's so many freaking things that we can attempt to do, right, when trying to conceive. And we want to do all of them because, obviously we want to get pregnant and we want to stay pregnant. And so it's just this endless, almost kind of like trial and error of trying something, maybe not succeeding, wondering why it didn't work, wondering, if you did it right, and having that, that stress cycle. And so knowing exactly by testing where we need to focus in on is, I think, very powerful, not to only obviously get results, but for our mentality. Yep. And so that's a huge clarifying piece. And I'm so happy it was part of your journey too.
Yeah.
Anything else there that you want to add?
Just sort of that it's not a one and done kind of thing. Like, this information is going to stay with me even through the rest of my, reproductive years and beyond. And that's sort of, I think, the power of a functional approach, which is that it gives you information with yourself rather than, I don't know. I just think it's like a longer investment in self-knowledge, right? Which is very valuable. Yeah.
Yeah. And I, even from the very beginning of my career, I always had this kind of idea, and I never knew how to really kind of say it to people without sounding completely wrong. But the point to me is that I want people to come to me and learn the information they need to learn, so that they don't have to always be dependent on me. So that honestly, I don't have to see you again. Not that I love all the people I work with. I get so very close with people. And so those relationships are very meaningful. But it's like, listen, if I never see you again and you go on and are empowered to then make certain choices in your health, your family's health, your children's health, etc., I feel like that is the purpose of functional medicine and functional nutrition.
Yeah.
And so, and unfortunately, a lot of our medical system in this country is reliant on people coming back for more, right? Coming back to fill another prescription, coming back to do that annual checkup, which what does that even help us anyway, in my opinion. But, it really is providing you the tools to then move forward in a different and better way. So I'm so happy you feel that way.
Yeah, I think it's even like it relates to a bigger piece about fundamentally believing that your body is meant to thrive with the right tools and the right environment. And that's been like a separate journey for me. And also, and just like trusting my body, right? After all that it's been through. So I think this has been helpful. And I love that message of empowerment, right? Work yourself out of a job.
Yeah. And what better time to have that and really believe in that than, obviously getting pregnant, staying pregnant, but then also delivering and going up to the point of having the baby. And, then that's a whole nother topic we could get into about empowering women to know that our bodies this is what they do. Right. And so, and then from that point on, again, I think your whole family can benefit from those lessons that you then know and instill. So very, very powerful. Incredible. Amazing, Rachel. Well, I just want to thank you for taking some time out of your day and sharing your story. I know that it will help many women and couples just to kind of understand that there are different options. There are different ways. There are pieces that we can bring in to fill in those gaps. And it's not that it's one versus another, or one is better or worse. It's that comprehensive picture. And I love that you kept seeking that out and really pushed for that and advocated for yourself in that way.
I really wanted to have a baby.
You got it. I mean, what better motivation, right? So absolutely. And I just also want to say and put that back on you and just say, I mean, amazing work. And just look what you have done for your body and your family. And you should feel really proud of that. And I can't wait to, follow you as we go through these next couple of months and just make sure we're doing well. But thank you so much for your time. And I hope you have a fantastic day.
Thank you. You too.